The first sound is not a voice but a hum, low and endless, like the breath of some buried star. It trembles through the stone and filigreed gold, through the bone-white ribs that arch above the tunnels like the cage of a giant, extinct thing.
It finds the children before the torchlight does.
It finds them while they sleep and while they wake, while they cling to the edges of dreams that will never return. The hum becomes a path, and the path becomes a procession. And in that procession are small hands that do not belong to the world above any more. Bootsteps follow,
Measured and without haste, a ritual cadence that has been walked 1,000,000 times before.
Rust-red robes whisper over checkerboard tiles worn smooth by devotion. In their wake trails the scent of oil and incense, a sweetness cut with iron. Old blood remembered by sacred machines. The air is warm down here, too warm, touched by invisible fires that do not flicker, but burn in one unwavering note. Somewhere far beyond sight, something vast is being fed, and it is always hungry. The children do not know why they were chosen. They were told, each in their turn, with a hand to the shoulder or a finger to the lips, that it is an honor. The words were meant to be soft, but they fell like seals on parchment, final and binding. They know only that doors closed behind them without a sound. They know that the light changed color when they crossed the threshold, that white daylight faded to gold, and that gold grew heavy, and that heaviness became law. Their cries echo down the corridors and come back altered, thinner, as if the walls have drunk the fear and left only the husk of it to answer. They are led by figures whose faces are half shadow, half brass. Optics blink with insect patience. Vox grills purr with prayer-like static. When a child stumbles, a robed hand steadies, never cruel, never kind. A litany follows each misstep, a murmured fragment of code and catechism, as if the act of catching a falling body must be recorded as maintenance, a correction of alignment. They move onward beneath vaults etched with constellations that are not constellations, but circuit maps of devotion, stars replaced by nodes, heavens replaced by schematics. The chamber opens like a mouth. Sound swells. The hum gathers mass until it becomes presence, pressure on the eardrums, on the teeth, on the soft spaces behind the eyes. The floor here is a mosaic of saints and ships, of wars won and wars still burning, a history too large to fit in the skulls of children. The lights are not lamps, but halos caged in iron, shedding a gold that refuses to flicker, that refuses to admit the existence of night. Shadows, when they do appear, arrive not as mercy but as geometry, hard-edged, obedient to angles, forbidden to soften. The priests of the sacred order approach in 2 lines, each bearing a thurible that bleeds a slow blue smoke. Within the smoke, a sharper scent, ozone, informs the lungs that electricity is close, intimate as breath. Between their shoulder plates, cables like braided hair run to altars whose faces are mirrors of polished bronze. On those mirrors, the children see themselves for a heartbeat and then do not recognize what looks back. Mortals do not often see their own fear multiplied by cathedral light. The reflection is not cruel, only honest, and honesty hurts. Ash is prepared in bowls. It is very fine, as if ground from parchment and old prayers. Each child is brought forward. The hand that marks their foreheads trembles with practiced accuracy, neither hurried nor slow. A sigil appears, and with it a warmth that is not warmth, a touch that burns without flame. The ash tastes of bone and old thunder when it trickles to the lips. The prayer that follows is in 2 voices, the human murmur, and beneath it the faint clatter of logic and coil, translating faith into a language the machines can accept. The blessings sound like farewells because, here, all blessings are. They are asked their names. Some whisper. Some are too afraid to find the string of sounds they carried from the world above. The scribes do not wait. A stylus scratches a thin line through each name, and replaces it with a number that gleams like a nail. The children do not understand the comfort some men find in numbers. They feel something pass from them, a fragile leaf pressed between pages and forgotten. When they try to remember their names later, they will be able to recall the shape of a mother's hand, the salt of soup, a laugh, but not the syllables. The syllables belong to the ledgers now. Listen. There is the slow exhale of bellows. There is the beat of hidden pistons. There is the far-off scream of a metal throat opening to the sunless blaze that must never be allowed to go out. There is the softest of weeping quickly swallowed. There is the small courage of standing still when every primitive urge begs to run. Faith, down here, is measured not in words, but in the distance between a trembling ankle and flight. Faith is remaining. They are dressed in white that is not white, but the idea of it, rough woven cloth that scratches like penance.
A collar is fitted at the throat, light as a ring and heavy as a promise.
The metal wakes upon contact, prizing a whisper from the skin, the tiny purr of alignment, of readiness. The first time a child hears the collar answer them, they think it is alive.
It is. It lives, with the lives placed into it.
Some reach up to touch it. Hands are gently lowered by attendants who never meet their eyes. The room where they will sleep is also where they will wake. The beds are narrow and clean, set in rows that make human beings look like sheet music, written too tightly on a page. Above each bed, a small icon glows, a star, a flame, an eye. No one explains the meanings. They will learn by proximity, by the way the icons brighten when the hum deepens, by the way the flame dims when someone is taken away and does not return. The language here is not made of letters, but of lights. Night, if it could be called that, comes when the hymn shifts key. The change is slight, but it drops like temperature. A child with hair the colour of dust turns on her side and presses her ear to the thin mattress until she finds the vein of the song threading the stone. She does not know that ships will one day trust this same song through storms of void and teeth of madness. She knows only that it is constant. Constancy in a world that has lost her name is a mercy sharp enough to cut. A priest walks the aisle between the beds, his silhouette a moving pillar in the never dark. His hand, for a moment, rests on the cot frame of a boy who is trying not to breathe too loudly. The boy's ribs hitch anyway. The priest whispers a passage about duty, about the solace of order, about the privilege of being necessary. A few words rise above the rest. Serve, light, forever. They hover in the air like motes, turning slowly, and then settle into the throat of the boy, who swallows and feels them become part of his blood. In the morning, though morning is only a softer intensity of gold, a different procession begins. Tongues are examined for health. Lungs are tested with long, slow inhalations of incense, dense enough to sting the eyes. Palms are inspected not for callus, but for tremor. Those who tremble are not dismissed. Their shaking is recorded, and the record is made holy by the act of writing it. Everything is holy here, and because everything is holy, nothing is spared. They are taught to listen before they are taught to sing, not to the melodies of men, but to the architecture of sound itself, the droning pillars, the flutter of vents, the tiny crackle of dust meeting statically charged air. Hear the shape of the chamber, a voice instructs, calm as iron. Hear the distance from your heart to the altar. Hear the silence behind the noise. The silence is there, a vastness tucked inside the hum, a hole in the fabric of hearing where something terrible and beautiful resides.
Some flinch from that silence.
Some lean toward it. Each response is carefully noted. When the time comes to mark them fully, they are led to a smaller room where the light does not dominate, but waits. The air is cooler, metallic. Here the tools are kept, wrapped in cloth, washed in prayers until the metal remembers the words. The contact is brief, a kiss of wire at the base of the skull, a taste of lightning. Light explodes behind closed eyes, the bitter white of winter sun on broken glass, and then recedes, leaving a ringing behind like a bell, struck once and never allowed to die. They sway, hands hold them steady. No one falls.
Afterward, the world is sharper.
The hum has threads in it they had not heard before, fine as nerves. The priests speak, and the words arrive with shadows attached, meanings that bruise. Pain announces itself as a teacher and takes its place in the front row. Fear sits beside it, quiet now, attentive. Together they instruct the children in the single lesson that matters. You were born to be necessary, and necessity is a fire that does not ask permission.
They do not know why they were taken.
They only know that when the ash dried on their foreheads, the skin beneath kept the shape. They only know that the blessings said over them were weighted like stones, tied to the ankles of those who must cross deep water. They only know that when the camera of the mind lingers on their faces, child faces still for a little while longer, the expressions are not of understanding, but of inheritance. Terra passed down like a surname.
Honor imposed like a chain.
Somewhere above them, the palace spreads its impossible wings across a city of 1 trillion. The sky, if they could see it, would be a bruise of engines and prayers. But the sky does not matter here. Here there is only the corridor of gold and bone, and the hum and the fire no one may look upon directly. Here there are children who learn to step without sound because sound belongs to the hymn, and the hymn must be kept clean. The last thing before sleep is always the same. A breath, a pause. The hum deepens by a degree too fine for instruments not built for faith. The collars respond with a soft, unanimous click, like beads counted in a darkness that has forgotten the sun. In that moment, small hearts synchronize with the machine that needs them. They do not know its name.
They do not need to.
It knows theirs no longer, and that is how the light is kept. The first lesson is breath, and even that hurts. The second is listening, not with ears but with nerves drawn tight as harp strings. The chamber teaches them both. It is a world that hums like an open wound, a vault of gold and shadow where air tastes of incense and iron, where the light is so constant it feels like pressure, like a hand on the back of the skull pushing you toward the altar. They stand in their rows, no longer children, not yet anything else, and the collars at their throats flicker to life with a moth-quiet tremor. The hum finds them. The hum takes them. The hum feeds them back to the flame. Inhale, says a voice that is not a voice but a measured vibration through the floor, a litany inscribed into the stone. Their lungs obey.
Hold, the light deepens by a fraction.
Somewhere above, the great conduits flare with a sunless fire that smells faintly of rain on hot copper. Sing. It begins as a thin line, a silver filament of sound stretched between trembling bodies. It is not melody, not yet. It is raw voltage rendered audible, a single note dragged from a single throat, and then braided with another and another until the noise gathers weight and shape and becomes a pillar. The pillar becomes a bridge. The bridge leads outward, far beyond the walls, across a night that eats memory and swallows stars, toward a beacon that must not dim. Their voices are the road. Their voices are the toll. Pain is the teacher now, and it is precise. Electrodes kiss the soft skin behind the ears. The kiss burns. Rivulets of neural fire seep into cortex and cerebellum with the intimacy of whispered secrets, aligning thought to frequency, fear to timbre, heartbeat to pulse width. They are tuned like instruments and unmade like people. Each correction comes as a flash behind the eyes, a taste of blue metal at the back of the tongue. Each improvement earns a nod from a choirmaster whose face is half reliquary, half skull, and whose hands smell of sanctified oil. Hold the light, the choirmaster murmurs, and lever arms embedded in the dais roll, pain like a new dawn across 1,000 spines. And yet, what rises from them is beautiful. Should not be, it is. The tone blooms, fractal and slow, a garden of harmonics opening petal by petal in an atmosphere of gold. The chamber responds with a quiet that is not silence but obedience. It offers back soft reverberation, tender as a confession, letting the sound live a second longer so it can become prayer. Their throats bleed where the edges of the notes cut, thin seams of red swallowed and forgotten, because to stop is to fail, and to fail is to die. The collars at their necks glow. The light in their eyes hardens to mirror-bright resolve. They do not sing to be heard. They sing to be transformed. Each note is torn from a depth that had no name until pain drew the lines. They learn, over hours that lengthen into a geometry of suffering, to place the sound not only in their mouths but in their bones. They feel resonance climb their ribs like a ladder of fire and settle behind the heart, a steadying weight that whispers, "Be the chord that cannot break." The electro-hymns braid with their pulse until the boundaries dissolve, until the song is not on the air but moving inside the blood, mapping veins the way the Astronomican maps void. Above them, the watchers stand motionless, armor burnished to dusk. The custodians are statues when they are still, meteors when they move, but today they do not move. Their helms turn almost imperceptibly, tracking waveforms and posture and failure. They are the silent edge of an expectation that never softens. The god requires. The god is owed. No pity grows in that shade. It cannot.
Pity would be a draught, and draughts make flames gutter.
Instead, there is duty, perfect and terrible. And the children, no, the singers, learn to love its shape, because love is softer than dread and fits better in the mouth when you need to breathe between pains. The chamber glows brighter when the pitch is true. It is not theatrics, it is feedback, a holy circuit closing. Gold reflects gold until the air itself seems metal. Sweat stings eyes already raw from incense. Muscles shake in fine insect shivers as the diaphragms of 1,000 bodies fight the tremor to carry sound smooth across the abyss. Somewhere a voice collapses into coughs. A tendril of current bites that throat back into line. The line holds. The bridge does not break. Time loses its edges. Minutes merge like wax under a steady flame. They measure the hours not by clocks but by the way pain migrates. First, a crown of needles drilling the scalp. Then a rasp wrapping the larynx. Then a long, cold nail pushed quietly through the sternum to pin the heart to tempo. When one of them falters, another swells to cover the gap. Instinct or mercy or simply the training that has become reflex. They are singular and they are a choir. They are alone inside their skulls, and they are not alone at all. There is a moment, there is always a moment, when the note opens a door and a thin wind of something vast, something that smells like rain in a city that no longer knows rain, blows through them. The Astronomican is not seen. It is inferred by absence, like the shape of an enormous creature sliding beneath black water. They do not look. They would be unmade if they did. They hold the line. They keep the light. Between phrases, the choir masters walk with slow priestly steps, machine auguries clicking and whirring, vox beads translating the shape of pain into useful data. Stability at 9-7, murmurs one, his words eaten by the chamber and returned as a faint echo in a different key. Phase drift contained. A small adjustment, the pressure of a thumb on a jaw to place it forward, a brass comb drawing bloodless lines across a scalp to reset an electrode's communion with the cortex.
Again. The word drops like a coin into a deep well.
The sound that rises to meet it is a cathedral. They taste metal and smoke. They taste their own fear, thinned and salted into something drinkable. They taste the ash of prayers burned so long ago that only the memory of heat remains. Their throats ache with a pleasant, hateful clarity. The ache is proof that they still own their bodies. The ache lies. Ownership has been signed over in a language written in voltage. And yet within the ache something living resists total translation.
A tremor like grief.
A tremor like pride. Faith, perhaps. Faith not in mercy, but in purpose, in being necessary, in being a single human. Trembling thread in a tapestry large enough to wrap a species against the cold. At the height of the hymn, the floor vibrates with a frequency no instrument could register without breaking. The sound is not sound anymore. It is shape and light and the slow, crushing empathy of a gravity well. They are held in it like insects in amber, suspended, gleaming, preserved for as long as the note demands.
Vision tunnels, black blooms at the edges.
In that narrowing world, each singer meets themselves. The child they were, standing beneath a ceiling of bone and gold. The voice they are now, carved down to a blade that sings when it cuts. Some weep without tears, some smile without joy. All sing. When the phrase ends, there is no applause, no relief, only the aftertaste of intensity. The chamber exhales. The light returns from white to gold. Bodies sway, knees unlocking, spines cracking like knuckles. A cup touches a lip here, a dropper is offered there, stimulant, analgesic, sacrament, each indistinguishable from the others under the rubric of function. Again. The word returns, gentler this time, like the hand of a teacher who knows the lesson will scar and must still be taught. They begin again. The opening interval is lower now, a descent into a room beneath the room, into a register that shakes dust from ancient carvings and invites the ancestors in the stone to listen. The harmonics gather differently, heavier in the chest, thicker in the mouth. The choir becomes weather. The choir becomes the long, patient storm you do not escape but survive beneath. The neural fire, not satisfied with shaping the mind, cups it, holds it, turns it slowly toward a distant, invisible star. The turn hurts. The turn heals. They cannot tell the difference, and are not asked to. On the balcony, a custodian moves at last, the subtle shift of a mountain. His gaze tracks along the ranks as one might watch an engine's pistons for the first whisper of failure. He knows these voices will end in silence. He knows the beacon will not. The arithmetic is not cruel. It is merely infinite. His hand rests upon the rail, fingers brushing a groove worn by centuries of watching, and for an instant the gold hums to his touch, acknowledging a lineage of guardianship that is as pitiless as vacuum and as necessary as flame. As the cycle of singing and recovery grinds on, a change comes so slowly that only those with suffering's patience perceive it. The pain, which was a tyrant, becomes a companion with impossible demands. It keeps them company in the long reach of the note, an arm around the ribs, a cold palm on the throat, saying, "I will stay with you as long as the light needs you." In that companionship, a strange tenderness grows, not toward themselves, but toward the work, toward the idea that human voices can stand between the void and the fall. It is not joy. Joy is a word for other worlds. It is something like devotion drained of innocence and filled with endurance. Night does not come. The hymn decides when darkness is allowed, and today the hymn permits only dimness. The brief shadow cast by a turning technician or the wing of a maintenance servitor as it glides overhead, shedding a brief rain of static. The air grows warmer, then cools as vents breathe on a schedule older than anyone living. The collars at 1,000 throats pulse together, a constellation brought down from the ceiling and wrapped around human flesh. Their glow paints the sweat on collarbones and cheekbones with a pale coronation. One voice falters. The current rises in quiet reprimand, a parent lifting a child's chin. The voice steadies. Another voice, raw and sure, threads into the fabric, and for a heartbeat the entire choir leans into that strength. This is how they survive, by carrying one another inside the sound, by making a home there that consists of nothing but endurance arranged with care. They will not remember faces when the cycle ends. They will remember timbres, the warm burr that always found the true pitch when others slid sharp, the silvered edge that cut a path through density, the shy tremolo that trembled until it learned to be steel. At last, a bell hidden somewhere in the architecture tolls once. A soft bloom of vibration felt more than heard. The choirmasters lower their hands. The current recedes like a tide ashamed of its hunger. Voices trail to a single thread, then to a hairline, then to a breath that is more idea than air. In the world outside this chamber, ships alter course by a fraction and live. Navigators open their eyes and weep without knowing why. Somewhere, a child is born beneath a sky of ash and stars and survives the night. None of the singers will hear those echoes. Their reward is the ache that returns when the note releases them, the ache that tells them they are still here and the light is still burning. They swallow, tasting rust and incense and the ghost of lightning. They do not speak. Speech would be blasphemy against what their voices were just used to do. They stand in heat that has no flame, in silence that is not peace, and wait for the next summons. In the shadows above, the guardians resume their stillness, sentries to a god who demands only more. The singers bow their heads. Somewhere deep within, the neural fire cools to embers that will blaze again on command. They breathe once together, a single trembling lung. The chamber listens. The hum smiles without mercy, and the lesson continues. Time loses its meaning in the dark beneath Terra. There are no dawns here, no evenings, only the slow, endless turning of the machinery that feeds the light above. The choir does not count days anymore. Their world is measured in breaths drawn between screams, in the seconds it takes for the fire to cool on their skin before the next hymn begins. The years dissolve into ash and echo. All that remains is the rhythm of devotion pounding like a dying heart. The air itself is heavy, thick with incense, smoke, and the iron tang of blood baked into stone. The walls breathe heat. Every surface sweats oil and sorrow. The scent of burnt flesh lingers beneath the sanctified perfumes, a note of truth beneath the lie of holiness. When one voice falters, the chamber knows. The hum shifts, falters, then steadies again, as hands, metal, unshaking, descend to silence the weakness. The scream that follows is not loud. The choir has learned to scream inwardly, where no one can hear but the Emperor himself. The body is carried away without ceremony.
Ash replaces the space it once occupied, and that ash is gathered like relics of the saints.
The choir masters call it sanctification. They speak the same litany every time, the same hollow verse. His voice now feeds the flame. The phrase is carved into the walls, into the memory of every singer still living. There is comfort in its repetition, the way a wound begins to feel familiar if you press it long enough. When the furnace is raw, no one looks away. To look away is to remember that it could be you. The sacred fire consumes the fallen. The sound is not the hiss of burning meat, but a strange melodic crackling, as if the air itself is singing their farewell. The flames glow gold, then white, then something beyond color, a brilliance too bright for mortal eyes. It is said the Emperor's light shines through those fires. If that is true, then his light smells of charred cloth and sorrow. The choirmasters watch the smoke rise and call it holy. They record the temperature, the purity of the burn, the pitch of the final note emitted by the dying flesh. Everything is measured, catalogued, blessed. Even death must be efficient when it serves the Imperium. The choir returns to song before the ashes have cooled. Their throats are lined with scar tissue, their voices raw metal grinding against divinity. Faith and torment are no longer two words but one, fused by repetition. They sing not because they believe, but because belief has become reflex. There is no boundary now between prayer and pain, between obedience and annihilation. In the Emperor's service, the difference has burned away. They are the hymn made flesh, and flesh, in time, becomes indistinguishable from smoke. The choirmasters move among them, shrouded in robes of rust red and gold. Beneath the cloth, cables writhe like veins. Their faces are half machine, their eyes lenses that click softly as they study each trembling singer. When they speak, their voices carry two tones, the human whisper of prayer and the mechanical purr of correction.
Hold, they murmur. Endure.
Burn brighter. Their words are meant to inspire, but their eyes betray them. Behind the polished glass is nothing. No spark of pity, no trace of soul. They have seen too much. They are priests of efficiency now, not faith. Their duty is to keep the choir alive, not whole. The song rises. Thousands of voices woven together into one endless cry that fills the chamber and seeps into the metal bones of the palace itself. It climbs through pipes and conduits, through machinery older than memory, and into the psychic ether, where it becomes the Emperor's beacon. The sound is beautiful, in the way a star collapsing might be beautiful. It carries every emotion known to man, devotion, fear, longing, despair, all stripped of meaning and distilled into pure vibration. The choir no longer prays for salvation. They pray to remember what salvation once felt like. As they sing, the light shifts around them. The golden hue that bathes their faces flickers, deepening into a shade that feels like heat made visible. The walls pulse faintly with life, a rhythm too slow to be human. In the far recesses of the hall, shadows move that are not shadows. The light bends and trembles as if something vast is watching, listening. It might be the Emperor. It might be the machine. Down here, the difference is irrelevant. Both demand worship. Both demand fuel. Sometimes, between hymns, when exhaustion quiets the mind, a singer will remember.
A face, a voice.
A fragment of sunlight on a childhood morning. The memory feels foreign, like a relic from another species. They clutch it for a moment, trembling, before the next wave of song washes it away. The memory fades, leaving behind only the warmth of the fire and the ache in their chest. To remember too long is dangerous. It breeds longing, and longing is rebellion. The choirmasters know this. When a voice begins to drift, to tremble with too much feeling, they adjust the current. A pulse of energy lances through the collar, quick and precise. The singer jerks, gasps, and the note returns to its perfect pitch. Harmony restored. Pain is the tuning fork of the faithful. Without it, the song would falter, and the Imperium would lose its light. The priests call this mercy. The singers call it the reminder. In the spaces between verses, the choir breathes as one, shallow, synchronized, mechanical. The air shimmers with heat. The smell of oil seeps from their skin. The marble beneath their feet has grown smooth from centuries of movement, polished by countless generations who stood and sang in the same place until they fell. There are no graves here. The choir's bodies become part of the air they breathe, the ash they inhale, the fire they feed. Every exhalation carries the ghosts of those who sang before them. The air itself is made of devotion. Above them, the great furnaces thrum in time with the hymn.
Sparks rain down like stars.
The light refracts through the rising smoke, painting halos around bowed heads. The sight would move a mortal heart to tears if mortals were allowed to see it. But no one visits the choir. Their existence is a secret too sacred to speak of. The Imperium worships the light, never the fire that makes it. In rare moments of stillness, when the hymn fades and only the echo remains, the choir can hear the low heartbeat of the machinery that keeps them alive. It is the sound of eternity, slow, grinding, patient, the sound of something that has forgotten why it began. In that sound they find a strange comfort. The machine is like them, tireless, faithless, necessary. It asks nothing but endurance. It gives nothing but continuation. Somewhere, in the endless gold above, the Emperor's corpse sits immobile on his throne, sustained by their agony. They will never see him, they will never hear his voice. But sometimes, in the instant before sleep takes them, they imagine they can feel his gaze, vast, impersonal, and unbearably heavy, pressing down from beyond the walls. It is not love. It is not even acknowledgement. It is gravity, eternal and indifferent. The choir does not resent him. They have no strength left for resentment. They are beyond rebellion, beyond hope. They exist only to continue to burn, to fill the silence with sound. Their faith has become the smoke that blinds them, the fire that devours them, the air that keeps them alive. They no longer pray for deliverance. They pray to remember what pain once meant. Not because they wish to escape it, but because they fear the day when even suffering will lose its meaning.
And so they sing endlessly, beautifully, horribly.
Their voices rise through the furnaces, through the fire, through the bones of Terra itself, until the sound becomes indistinguishable from the light that guides humanity through the void. Above the stars shimmer faintly, unaware of the agony that sustains them. The Imperium burns bright. The choir burns brighter still. There are no echoes in this place anymore, only resonance. The walls do not give sound back. They absorb it, digest it, and hum with it until even silence begins to tremble. The choir has sung for so long that their voices have become the air itself, the pulse of the stone, the steady ache of existence beneath the golden throne. Down here, the boundaries between prayer and noise, between life and function, have long since dissolved. The chamber is gold, but it is not beauty. It is weight. Every surface gleams like a wound cauterized too cleanly to heal. Veins of molten metal run beneath the floor, carrying power upward, carrying agony outward. The light that spills across the choir is holy only because it kills what it touches slowly. They sing within it because there is nothing else left to do. Faith and fire have become indistinguishable. It happens quietly. The one who questions does not shout. He does not blaspheme. His voice simply falters, trembling on the edge of a note that should have been perfect. Perhaps it was a moment of exhaustion, or perhaps a thought too heavy to stay buried. The note breaks. It is a small thing lost among thousands of others, but in the Imperium, even a whisper of doubt is loud enough for eternity to hear. The choir masters freeze. Their mechanical hearts tick once, and the current in the chamber shifts. The light bends. The air thickens. The questioning singer looks up, eyes wide as the sound dies in his throat, not torn out, not cut, but unmade. There is no blood, no wound.
Only silence, perfect and absolute.
The others do not stop singing. They cannot. They have learned that interruption is worse than death. The note continues without him, as if the void has taken his place. He falls to his knees, clutching at his chest, as if searching for the voice that was his soul. His mouth opens, but no sound comes. Around him the hymn swells, louder, brighter, purer. The Emperor has spoken, and he has said nothing. In that nothing, every truth the choir has denied becomes clear. They are not singing to him. They are singing for him. Their pain is not a gift offered upward. It is a harvest reaped downward. Every note, every breath, every ounce of human suffering is fuel, psychic kindling to feed the undying will of a God who has forgotten what mercy sounds like. Their faith sustains the galaxy, not through grace, but through combustion. The light grows unbearable. The air vibrates with power. The silence of the condemned singer becomes another instrument folded into the harmony, a hollow frequency that fills the spaces between the other's cries. His body remains upright, eyes glowing faintly, lips moving in rhythm though no voice emerges. He has been woven into the machine, not as sound, but as absence. He has become a shape in the music, a ghost chord. The choirmasters resume their motion. They make the sign of the aquila with trembling mechanical fingers and whisper, "The Emperor's will." The words are not belief. They are survival. Above them, hidden in the blinding radiance, the custodians still watch. They do not move, but their armor glows with reflections of fire and sorrow. Their vigilance is eternal, and their compassion is extinct. The God they guard does not need worshippers to love him, only enough of them to keep burning. The Astronomican flares. What began as light becomes a roar that only souls can hear. The flames are not flames but consciousness, igniting in unison, stretching beyond the body, beyond the stone, beyond the planet. The choir's agony becomes transmission, a psalm that threads through the void, touching 1,000,000 worlds and 1,000,000,000 lives that will never know them. Their screams translate into guidance, into hope, into survival. Somewhere, a ship lost in the warp finds its path again. Somewhere, a captain breathes a prayer of thanks, never knowing the cost. The chamber shudders. Golden dust drifts from the ceiling like falling stars. The heat is immense, but the choir does not sweat anymore. The fire has already claimed that part of them.
Their flesh no longer burns, it glows.
The divine current moves through their veins, replacing blood with purpose. Theirs is not life, but continuation. The pain remains, but it has become abstract, a distant thrum at the edge of perception. When everything hurts forever, nothing truly hurts at all. The choirmasters walk among them, ensuring alignment. One pauses beside the silenced singer, the one who dared to think. His eyes flicker with faint recognition. Once long ago he too had asked questions. Now the part of him that remembers what questions were has been smoothed away, filed down by centuries of obedience. He adjusts the silent one's head so it faces the altar, as if it still matters. "The Emperor protects," he murmurs, the words automatic, hollow, meaningless. The silence gives no answer. In the distance, the machinery howls. The sound is colossal, like a mountain shifting in its sleep. Bolts of psychic energy crawl along the walls, flickering in hues that mortal sight cannot name. The hymn reaches a crescendo, every voice stretched to its limit, trembling between devotion and disintegration. The air is no longer air. It is molten light vibrating through marrow and memory. The singers no longer know if their eyes are open or closed. The world is brightness. The world is pain. The world is God. Somewhere above, the Emperor's body sits unmoving on his throne, a corpse given the illusion of life by the agony of countless souls. He does not speak. He does not need to. His silence is the engine that drives the Imperium. His stillness is its pulse. In that stillness, the choir finds both purpose and despair. They are the voice he will never hear, the breath he will never breathe, the prayer that replaces his heartbeat. And yet within that silence there is something almost tender. Not compassion, not pity, but inevitability. The Emperor cannot answer them because he has become the question itself. His silence is not cruelty, it is function. The choir does not suffer because he demands it. They suffer because the universe cannot survive without their suffering. In the logic of the Imperium, this is mercy. The song enters its final phrase. The chamber glows like the inside of a dying star. The choirmasters bow their heads. The custodians lower their gaze. The silenced singer, his body now rigid, stands once more among the others, his lips forming words that no longer exist. The light devours the outlines of everything. Gold melting into white, shadow dissolving into brightness, sound collapsing into the heartbeat of a god who has forgotten his own name. For a moment, all distinctions vanish, between flesh and flame, faith and function, life and machinery. The choir is the Emperor. The Emperor is the choir. There is no separation, only transmission, endless and holy. The light pulses outward from Terra, washing across the void, touching distant systems where men still pray to the same silent God. None of them will ever hear the truth in that light, that it is made of screams. When the radiance fades, the chamber remains, scarred, smoking, silent. The choirmasters move again, adjusting, repairing, readying for the next hymn. The silenced singer stands motionless, a statue of devotion.
His face is calm.
The void in his throat hums faintly with residual power, the ghost of a note that once defied eternity. In the emptiness that follows, the camera drifts through the cathedral, across faces lit by fading gold, over engines sighing like dying hearts through air thick with sacred ash. Fire and silence have fused into one endless hymn. The choir breathes as one. The Emperor does not answer.
And still they sing.
There comes a point when pain ceases to be pain. When it lingers long enough, it becomes architecture, a thing that stands immovable against time. Deep beneath Terra, where the golden light bleeds through smoke and centuries, the choir has become such architecture. Their voices no longer tremble. They vibrate in perfect obedience. Their flesh no longer burns. It glows, translucent and thin as parchment. The machinery has grown into them. Cables through veins, brass into bone, circuits blooming where nerves once lived. The distinction between body and mechanism, between worshipper and altar, has dissolved completely. What remains is purpose. The light is everywhere. It pours from the walls, from the floor, from the cracks between the living and the dead. It burns so bright that shadows are only memories. Every breath tastes like metal and sanctity. The air hums with energy so dense that it crushes thought, leaving only awe. Above the constant vibration of the hymn, another sound begins to emerge, a faint, distant rhythm, like the heartbeat of something vast and unseen. It is the pulse of the Imperium itself, transmitted through blood and wire, echoing across the stars. The choir hears it, and for the first time they understand. Their song is not a prayer. It is an engine.
Every note is fuel. Every scream is circuitry.
The Astronomican, that shining beacon of faith that guides ships through the black abyss, is not powered by the Emperor's mercy. It is powered by the agony of his faithful. Their torment does not glorify him. It sustains him. The Emperor endures because they do not stop. And so humanity endures, blind and burning, believing the light to be divine when it is only the reflection of suffering refined into radiance. The revelation does not arrive as thought, but as vision, slow, seeping, impossible to deny. They see within the blinding gold the shapes of worlds.
Countless worlds, planets shrouded in smoke, empires drowning in devotion.
They see soldiers dying beneath banners of faith, mothers whispering prayers into the ears of their starving children, priests raising their hands toward a light that devours them whole. All of it flows upward, converging here into the Astronomican's heart, this chamber of fire and ruin, this shrine of voices that will never rest. They realize at last that their suffering is the thread binding every human act of faith. Without their pain, the galaxy would be silent. Without their song, the Emperor's golden throne would grow cold. One by one, their bodies begin to fail. Muscles collapse. Skin tears where metal pushes through. Fingers fuse to the cables they once held. Blood thickens into a shining resin that hardens in the air. The transformation is grotesque and sacred, horrifying and peaceful.
As they dissolve into the machine, they see the world as it truly is, a cathedral built on corpses, its candles lit by the dying.
They have become the forgotten saints of the Imperium, nameless martyrs who will never be remembered, their existence erased by the very light they sustain. The choirmasters watch in silence, their mechanical faces reflecting the radiance. Their data scrolls record the readings, heat levels rising, resonance perfect, signal absolute. Yet, even in their artificial eyes, something human flickers. A tremor of recognition, perhaps sorrow, perhaps envy. They too are trapped within this orbit of obedience. They too are consumed by the doctrine that makes suffering sacred. One reaches out as if to touch the nearest singer, but the light pushes him back, the heat searing his synthetic skin. The machine has claimed its offering. There is no space for witnesses in divinity. Above them, the custodians stand as statues, their armor now glowing like molten metal. They do not move. They do not speak. Their task is eternal, to protect what must never be understood. Even they can feel the shift, the deepening of the hymn into something beyond sound. The Astronomican is awakening, expanding, devouring everything that sustains it. Its light stretches outward, through the layers of the palace, through the poisoned skies of Terra, piercing the void. To those across the galaxy it will appear as salvation, the unbroken promise of the God Emperor's love. To those within it, it is revelation, raw and final. The choir does not weep. There are no tears left to give. They stare into the radiance until their eyes dissolve, until their vision becomes light itself. In that blinding brightness they see the illusion of hope laid bare. Hope is not truth. It is survival, painted in gold to make endurance bearable. The Imperium is built not on faith, but on the fear of its absence. The light must never go out, for in darkness lies truth, and truth is unbearable. One by one the voices fade, but the song does not end. It continues, resonating through the bones of the dying, through the wires that drink their last breath. The sound changes, and it no longer a chorus of individuals, but a single, unbroken tone, vast and unending. It vibrates with a kind of serenity that feels almost merciful. The choir's agony has transcended itself. Their suffering has achieved perfect purity.
They are not alive, but they are not dead.
They are function. They are forever. The light consumes them completely. The last human shapes crumble, their outlines dissolving into streams of gold that flow upward into the great conduits. What remains are statues of ash and brass, hollow, radiant, beautiful in their ruin. The chamber is silent for a moment, the kind of silence that is not absence, but fulfillment. Then the machinery sighs, a low exhalation of heat and power, and the Astronomican pulses again, brighter than ever. The beacon has been fed. Far above, across 1,000,000 worlds, navigators lift their heads as the light strengthens. They feel the warmth of it touch their minds, gentle and guiding, unaware that it is made of screams. In the cold corridors of distant ships, men kneel and whisper, "The Emperor protects," never knowing the price. On dying planets, priests raise their arms to the sky and feel the glow on their faces and believe it is love. The illusion holds. Humanity endures, blind and burning. Back in the depths, the choir masters lower their heads. The custodians turn away. The chamber, once filled with song, now hums with a different music, the sound of power flowing through sanctified steel. The bodies of the choir have become part of the throne's breath, their souls stretched thin across the warp, singing still in places no sound should reach. They have become eternal, not in glory, but in purpose. The Emperor's silence remains absolute, and in that silence the revelation lingers. The light they sustain is holy only because it never ends. It cannot end.
It is both gift and punishment. The proof that humanity's salvation has always been purchased by the suffering of its own.
The choir's final song drifts upward, beyond flesh, beyond faith, beyond meaning. It threads through the stars, shimmering faintly, indistinguishable from the beacon it powers. To those who listen, it sounds like hope, but to those who have heard the truth, the ones now buried in the light, it sounds like the echo of their own voices, still burning, still calling out, still feeding the fire that will never die. The Emperor's light endures, the choir's pain endures with it, and somewhere between them the last fragment of humanity flickers, not alive, not gone, simply
remembered.
The song ends not with silence, but with static, a trembling vibration that clings to the air like ash, a residue of something once living. The choir's final note collapses inward, folding upon itself until all that remains is the hum of machinery, still hungry for more. The light above does not dim. It burns on, steady and merciless, bathing the chamber in its golden glare. The Astronomican endures, eternal, indifferent, unfeeling. It knows nothing of the voices that fed it, nothing of the faces that melted beneath its glow.
It only knows to shine. The bodies of the last singers are gone.
What remains are shapes carved from soot and faith, silhouettes fused into the metal floor, frozen in postures of devotion. Their robes, once white, have turned to gold dust, their bones to glass. The air hums faintly with the echo of their agony, as though the chamber itself remembers. The scent of sanctified smoke lingers long after the fire. It smells like rust and incense, like the breath of gods. Above, in the halls of the palace, the process begins again. The same corridors of gold and bone, the same hum of hidden engines, the same slow march of small footsteps echoing through the dark. Another generation of children, wide-eyed and silent, is led down into the depths. Their faces glimmer in the candlelight, innocent, frightened, unaware. The priests whisper to them the same words, spoken since time immemorial. To serve the Emperor is to be eternal. The lie moves through the air like prayer, and the children believe it because belief is all they have left. The machinery below awakens to their arrival. The conduits pulse, drawing in fresh air, fresh blood, fresh devotion. The great brass doors of the choir chamber groan open like the mouth of some ancient beast, ready to swallow again. The golden light spills outward, beckoning. The priests guide the children inside. Some hesitate, glancing at the walls where the shadows of the last generation are still burned into the metal. A gentle hand urges them forward. Faith requires no understanding, the priest says. Only endurance. They kneel. They are marked with ash. The oil lamps flicker as if in sympathy or perhaps in mockery. Somewhere deep within the machinery, the faint hum of the Astronomican's core resonates. A heartbeat the size of a star, pounding, feeding, eternal. The children do not yet understand that the rhythm will one day become their own. The choir masters return to their stations. Their movements are mechanical, automatic, born of centuries of repetition.
There is no emotion left in them, only precision.
The cables descend from the ceiling like strands of divine hair, brushing the ground with a static hiss. They are connected one by one, to skull, to spine, to soul. The first sparks leap across the metal, blue and white, singing softly like the whisper of angels. The children gasp. The light within the chamber flares, then steadies. The work begins. Far above, Terra turns slowly beneath its poisonous sky. The city stretches to the horizon, gilded and rotting. Pilgrims kneel in streets slick with oil and prayer. They look to the heavens and see the Astronomican blazing like the eye of a god, never knowing it burns with human screams. In every temple, priests raise their arms toward that radiance and cry that the Emperor protects. They do not hear the echo buried inside that light, the faint, static wail of the choir, stretched thin across eternity. Back within the chamber, the first sounds begin.
Hesitant, uneven trembling.
The new choir struggles to find its voice. Their throats ache, their lungs shudder under the weight of the hymn. But pain is a teacher that never falters. The choir masters adjust the voltage. The current climbs. The music sharpens. The screams smooth themselves into song. The machinery purrs in approval. Faith has become function once more. The walls vibrate with resonance. Dust falls from carvings older than history. The Emperor's will flows downward like sunlight refracted through blood. The old ash stirs on the floor, curling in the heat, lifting briefly as if remembering the shape of those who burned before. For a moment, it almost seems like the dead are singing again, a ghost choir joining the living, harmonizing in frequencies only the divine could hear. Then the moment passes. The hymn settles into its rhythm, endless and consuming. The camera drifts through the chamber. Golden light drips like molten wax across faces young and trembling. Firelight dances across their eyes, reflections of a god they will never see. Behind them, the silhouettes of the custodians remain motionless, their armor blackened with soot and memory. They have watched this same ritual unfold 10,000 times. They will watch it 10,000 more. They know there is no mercy in what they guard. Only necessity,
only endurance.
Time passes without moving. The hymn builds and breaks and builds again. Each note feeds the next. Each breath is a prayer, each cry a spark. The light does not flicker, it cannot. The choir's suffering is its fuel. Without them, the stars would die. Without them, humanity would drift into the dark and vanish. Their torment is the cost of survival, the unseen foundation of the Imperium's glory. Above, fleets navigate by the light they sustain. Worlds live and die by its guidance. None will ever know who burns for them.
None will ever care. Eventually, the choir masters speak the final benediction. The Emperor endures. Their voices are tired, empty.
The children repeat the words in perfect unison. The sound is soft, but it carries the weight of destiny.
As they speak, the light flares brighter, a golden pulse that rolls through the machinery like thunder trapped in metal.
Somewhere beyond mortal comprehension, the Astronomican responds. The beacon flares across the galaxy, a river of light threading the void. The Imperium endures. The cost renews. The camera rises slowly, pulling away from the chamber through layers of gold and dust and sorrow. The hymn becomes distant, then faint, then inaudible, replaced by the low hum of engines, the eternal throb of the throne's power. Above the noise, the narrator's voice emerges, quiet and reverent, heavy with awe and grief. "Some die for the Emperor," the voice says, its tone barely above a whisper. "Others are kept alive, to burn for him." The words linger, hanging in the air like smoke, before fading into the static that began it all. The screen darkens. For a moment there is nothing. No light, no sound, only the void where faith and fire meet. Then faintly, from somewhere deep within the silence, a note returns. A single, trembling voice, fragile and eternal. It grows, multiplying, spreading through the darkness like a spark through dry ash. Soon it becomes a chorus, distant and ghostly. The echo of a song that can never truly end. The light returns, faint and golden, pulsing with life and loss. The choir sings again. Humanity endures. The Emperor remains silent. The cycle is complete. The screen fades to black, and the last sound, soft, distant, almost human, is the whisper of the choir, still burning, still singing, still alive in the endless fire of devotion. A song worse than death, yet never allowed to die.